Okay guys, this is Lightroom. It is another Adobe piece of software, so things are very similar from this to kind of Photoshop in design, not just kind of visually. Some of the things kind of work in the same way, so when we go over to develop, it looks very similar to kind of the camera raw settings that you have. So it should be a nice transition from everything else to this. Lightroom is split up into kind of seven categories that you can see across the top. We're going to focus on library and develop. Library is going to be where we view and catalog our images, and develop is going to be where we edit our images and export them from there. So to import, we're going to go down to the bottom left and click import. This is going to give us a new dialog box, and it's going to have three columns. First column is going to be where you can find your images. Middle section is going to display them, so I've put them in Lightroom images on the desktop. It will display them. You can tick the ones you do want, the ones you don't want. I'm going to leave the ones that the pooch in, and this one on the side is going to ask you where you kind of want it. You can rename them all if you want. You can add some developer settings. If you like some of the presets and you want to batch edit them all straight away, you could if you wanted to, or add some keywords. So if this is a particular photo shoot for one of your projects, it might be that you try and categorize it as photo shoot 1 or inspired by. For your own work, it might be portraits and things like that. So I'm going to have all of these imported. Just a quick note on your folder system. Try and do this the exact same way as you do InDesign. So move all of your files first, put them in the right folders, and then start editing them. Because to save space, what I'm going to get you to do is select Add at the top. Okay, there's a few settings. You can copy them as a DNG, which will copy them to a new location, which means duplicating them, and it will also convert them to a DNG for you. You can copy them, so it will copy them as they are, and again duplicate them and put them into a new location. You can move them, so this would move it from my folder on the desktop into a new one, so not actually duplicating it, but just changing my kind of workflow and catalog system. And then add, which is what we're going to do, it will leave them in place and add them to the catalog, kind of like a linking system. Okay, so it won't duplicate them, won't take up any more space, and it'll leave it in your folder system so everything stays where it is. I find that one to be the best one, especially if you're kind of worried on space. So you're going to click Add, going to select them all, which is going to be just one click, and Shift and click them all. And then I'm going to click Import. I'll take you back to the library page and show me all the images. And we're just going to quickly look down on the left hand side, and this first box is the catalog, and currently we're now on all photographs. It has a previous import, so that'll just show the ones that I've just put in. We have folders, which show the folders are linked. So there's those two images from one of our skills lessons, and then the Lightroom images that I've just imported. And collections. Now, you can use collections if you wish. This might be a good way of maybe selecting your successful images. So let's say this is one of your photo shoots and you like images 1, 3, 5, and 10. I'm just holding Command and clicking on those. And let's make a new collection. I'll just call it successful shoot. And click create. Now those 4 images are then going to be placed in my successful shoot 1, and I can refer back to them at any point. It doesn't move them or delete them from my original folder, it just kind of tags them and say they're part of a collection. Another thing that you might find that useful for is maybe having a portfolio collection. As you guys will be working towards universities, and potentially some of you might be doing photography or any of the arts, having a portfolio space ready and already having some images in will be helpful down the line when you come to starting to print and select. So again, just click create collection and make one portfolio. And I've accidentally put all those in, hold on one second. If you delete them from that, it's not going to delete them, it's just going to take them from that selection. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. That will be different for everybody. You might have different ideas of how you catalog your work. You might want to do it from people to places with your own work. So yeah, you can have a look through that. It does have some preset ones, like past months, things like that. But create your own and start working in a logical workflow. Okay, so that is importing. We now have some images to work with, and you can view them a few different ways. You have this grid view, large scale view, and you can compare some as well. One last note before we move on to develop. On the right hand side, you've got the metadata. For things like documenting your contact sheets, this will show you all of the settings that your camera was on. You can see these were shot from my phone. Flash did not fire, focal length, exposure time, and dimensions and things like that. So if you do need to quickly find out the data of your images for things like your contact sheets and how you document, it's on there on the right. Okay, so let's go on to develop. Changed a little bit, but we still have some common themes. We've got 3 columns still, and we've got the timeline at the bottom. Timeline's a great way to see all of your work in the current folder that was selected. If you don't see some of your images, just go back to library, make sure you're in the right folder or on your collection. When you go into develop, it will just have those images in the timeline. Okay, so if you're not seeing some images, just go back to library and choose the right folder. Okay, and then first thing on the right, we have the histogram. Again, these are things like levels in Photoshop. You have the blacks, shadows, midtones, and highlights, and whites. You can click and drag this around if you wanted to, so if it's all bunched up on one side, you need to even that out and put it back into the middle, then you can. As we move further down, we've got some different settings that will change this user interface on the right, but we'll stay on this one for now. First thing, what I normally do actually is look at the white balance. So this little eyedropper, if you click this eyedropper, it's gone to an image of the pooch. This was taken under an orange kind of orange hued light at home. So with this eyedropper selected, I'm just going to pick one of the little teeth. Anything that's kind of white or neutral, if you click that, it'll sort out the white balance for you. So it's a good start when you're actually editing your images if you have any issues of white balance. Okay, if it's slightly off, you can go in and alter that yourself and put maybe a little bit more warmth back in if you think it's gone a bit too cold. And you can adjust it with the temperature and tint there. Okay, as we move down, we've got tone. This won't affect any color in your image, but it will affect like the tonal values. It does have an auto option. If you click this, sorry with the image selected, I've already done it, 1 second. If you click auto, then it tries its very best to automatically adjust these settings to suit the image. It doesn't always work, so be very wary of using on every image. As you progress down, you can change things like contrast, shadows, blacks. Again, each shot is going to be different. Adjust them to suit and see how that looks, but that's just going to affect tone. As we move down, we have this, and clarity can sometimes be overdone. Subtle is sometimes better, or predominantly better. Vibrance and saturation. So sometimes it's better to put the vibrance up and lower the saturation rather than just putting the saturation up and leaving the vibrance. It kind of keeps it looking a little bit more natural. So kind of doing a balancing act with vibrance and saturation. So what I'd encourage you all to do is just play around with those little settings initially. It's a good point to make that all of the changes that you make, if you're not happy with any of them, you can go into the image and click reset. It'll take it back to standard. Okay, like I mentioned before, this is non-destructive editing. It basically remembers a list of all of the things that you amend and change, and they can all be undone at any point. It's only until you export it that that becomes kind of solid, and that's only for the image that you export. This base here that you have, that will always be have that function to reset. Okay. On the left hand side, actually, you will see presets. This is a very nice feature of Lightroom. You can get alternate presets, which I'll try and find some actually for you as we go through this Lightroom tutorial. But you have quite a few presets that are very nice. Again, some of them can be a bit much, but others not so much. These general presets are normally pretty good, so I'm just going to reset that. Punch and auto tone. That's almost like auto levels in Photoshop, and punch just adds that bit of detail. You have some that are very generic to faces and scenic images that will try and sharpen it in a certain way. Then we have user presets, which we can change, and some video ones as well. Then as we move down, we have tone curve. This is a good one. If I click this little icon here, that should be how you see it first. And this is the histogram again. You've got your shadows all the way up to your highlights, and you can move these independently with the sliders. Just wiggle that kind of line around and it will move it up or down, having a different effect on each of those elements. Now if you wanted to have a little bit more control, you can click this icon again and add your own different points and move the curve just slightly different. Okay, if you make a mistake, if you want to remove any, just right click them and delete control point. Or Command Z, that works with this. So Command Option Z. Just Command Z, and that will take you back. Then we have HSL, hue, saturation, and luminance. This is a good one to have a lot more control over your images. You can select just those particular colors in the image and edit just those. Let's go into saturation. I can take the red, which will probably be majority in the brickwork. I can bring that down, or I can bring it up. Luminance, the same. Let's go for some blues in the image that will just focus on the sky. And hue, let's do the same. You can see how it changes the colour of the sky. Really good for landscape, especially if you're taking shots of like sunsets and things like that. Split toning, again, this is a good one. You can have two colours and change the hue of each one. So this is going to be in the highlights and the shadows. Let's see if we've got another image that might work better. So if I just pick a kind of cool colour for the highlights of blue and a warmer one for the shadows and put the saturation up, that's going to then give this kind of reddish colour to the shadows and the bluer colour to the highlights, and that's split toning. You're going to have two colours toning each side. That's a really nice one. Probably more contemporary techniques using this. You see a lot more of this in things like Instagram and things like that. So have a play around with split toning. Detail, you can go in and sharpen kind of the edges if you wanted to. Similar to the other ones, be very careful with this one because you can easily ruin an image. So if you do want to toggle between the original image and the image you've edited, just press backslash and it will show you the kind of the before and after. So this is the original image, this is now the split tone image. That's backslash. Okay, good to just keep checking back and forth, especially when you're doing subtle changes, just so you can see how it's changing the image. As you move down past detail and sharpening, we have lens correction. So some of you may have found this when shooting with wider angle lenses. So I think I've got an image here that was shot on the phone at its widest, and you can see that the edges are distorted just slightly. If you change the amount, it's going to try and counteract that. So if it was distorted the other way, we'd be bringing it this way, but trying to bring it so the proportions are all right. You can try and adjust the hues that might be put in there as well. And the vignette, sometimes with a wide angle lens, especially if you've got just the screw-on lenses that you can get, you can sometimes get like a dark edge like this around it. So if you want to try and counteract that, you can come down to this vignetting and bring it up until it's back to normal. Okay, might be the other way where it's too light and there's more light leaking into the edges for some reason, but normally it's the reverse and it's just darker edges. And then we have transform, where you can change the scale of it. So from there we've got some white edges that I'd like to get rid of. So if I go down to scale, just bring it up, it'll crop it for us. Underneath now we have effects. So if we go to another image, it might be that we want a vignette on this now. So a vignette is just darker or lighter edges. You can adjust the amount. Now this, I don't like when people put the white edges on. It is really only kind of very subtle black vignettes that it can kind of use, unless you've got a very valid reason for doing this. It would be kind of slightly blacker edges. I'm going to just overdo it so you can see it on your screens. You can change the midpoint and how far that vignette goes into the middle of your image. You can change the roundness of it. Try and make it more subtle, and likewise with the feathering, how long it takes it to get to that kind of vignette shape. Obviously we don't want this. It's a little bit more subtle, so it's very much a softer fade from that dark edge to your image. Highlights are just try and bring those highlights back through your vignette as well, so you're not damaging too much of the image. Okay, let's bring that down. It's a little bit more manageable. Backslash, so you can toggle between the two. Might still even be a little bit too dark, so I'm going to bring that back just a little bit more. Yeah. Okay, so one thing I have noticed by making this is the laptop is not coping very well. You'll probably already have heard the fan is trying to take off. So I'm going to try and fix that somehow. I'm not sure how just yet, but before my laptop takes off, could I ask you all to import some images into Lightroom? Go in and have a look at the presets. Have a play with this first set of options and edit some of your images. Some of the elements I didn't go over actually. Just before I let you go, we've got crop tool. That's very straightforward. That allows you to crop your image. You can choose different aspect ratios. You can change the angle. We have the spot removal for portraits, very similar to the one in Photoshop. You have red eye correction, where you can just click on the eye itself, and it will. Obviously, Luna Bear doesn't have any issues on her eyes here, but if you click, it then gives you these options where you can change the diameter. There is a pet eye option as well, so we'll click on that because it's right. And you can change your pupil size and keep the catch light if you wanted to. Change your pupil size and work with it that way. Okay. You can add gradients. So again, very similar to Photoshop. So if we're in a landscape image, you can add your gradient over the top by clicking and dragging. And it might be that it just changes exposure, so that the sky might be a little bit more dark or a little bit brighter than the rest. Or it could be that you have a tint going from kind of a more blue sky, just trying to make that a little bit more intense, but not affect the rest of the image. Okay, so we have gradients. Then we have a radial filter. Again, we can click and drag that out, so instead of having a linear gradient, you have a radial one. Okay, let's get rid of that. And then this one, the adjustments brush. This is where you can be very selective. So it's almost like the dodge and burn tool in Photoshop, but you have all of these features on the right hand side that you can change with it. So if I were to paint a section, not only now do I have the exposure like you would with the burn and dodge tool, you have everything. You just adjust it. So you have the color correction, so if you wanted to match that reflection of the blue sky, then you could. If you wanted to make it darker or lighter, you could. And all the while you can obviously zoom in and make this more precise. So they're just the other options at the top. Again, just subtle features that you would want when you're editing the images. Okay, so yeah, I do apologise at the fan. You can probably hear that over the top. So I'll try and fix that. But if you could go through, add some images, edit some images, and potentially add your responses onto Teams, that'd be awesome. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. I'll put some more video tutorials together for Lightroom if I fix the fan. If not, I hope you don't mind. You probably prefer it actually if I find other people's tutorials and give you those. But I don't want that to be some kind of cop out. So let me know if it's really annoying having that fan on, and I'll get back to you in the comments.